Which countries in the Americas have more players in Europe? By Americas, I mean CONCACAF and CONMEBOL. Why don't we dive into that? Hi, I'm Johan Filippo and welcome to Tactical Manager TV. Today we're going to go through the top 10 countries in the Americas in terms of amount of players playing in the top 11 leagues in Europe. But before we start, pay attention carefully to what I'm about to tell you. So the first thing you need to know is that all of this was done prior to the 2023 summer transfer window, and it does not include any future done deals. I do also want to say that this does not mean one nation is better than the other. It's mainly quantity, not quality. To measure quality, we would have to dive into many other variables. And even though you will see that most of the nations that have the most players are the best ones, but notice how I said mostly, not all of them. If we were to do it in terms of quality, we would probably have to cut it down to maybe the top 7 or 6 leagues and measure the productivity of the players, minutes in the league, Champions League minutes, and much more, which maybe we can do it in the future, but it'll be too much work for this specific video. Also keep in mind that for some of these leagues, countries that have dual national players that have an European passport have an advantage. For example, the United States. It's easier to get a transfer to Europe or some of these leagues if you have an European passport. Also, the reason we're doing the top 11 leagues, not top 10 or top 9 or top 5, it's because all of those leagues have a reasonable amount of players playing for national teams in the Americas. That's why we specifically stopped at the top 11. And the top 11 leagues are the English Premier League, the Bundesliga, the Italian Serie A, La Liga, Ligue 1 in France, the Eredivisie, which is the Dutch league, Liga Portugal, which is the Portuguese league, the Belgium league, the Turkish league, the EFL Championship, which is the second division of England, and a league from a country that starts with the letter R that I can't really say the name because I could get in trouble on YouTube, so I'm just gonna call it the Vodka League. Okay, I don't want to risk getting in trouble on YouTube, so I'm just going to call it the Vodka League. But there's one more thing that I need to tell you before we actually go to the ranking. Again, this video does not really measure which league exports more players, as some of these players might be from the country. They might be dual nationals and they might have been developed in a country in Europe, so they weren't really exported from the local league. They were just there. For example, Yunus Musa from the United States, right? He was developed in Europe, but he plays for the US men's national team. Or even another example is Messi from Argentina. Messi was mainly developed by Barcelona. Regardless, he counts here for this video, so does Yunus Musa for the United States. Hopefully everything I said made sense. And with that said, let's play the intro and let's dive in. Okay, so as I said, we're going to do a top 10 ranking. So which nation is number 10? So number 10 actually had 2 nations tied, and that was Mexico and Venezuela. So let's go through Mexico first. Mexico has 1 player in the English Premier League, and that is Raul Jimenez from Wolves. In La Liga, they have 3 players, with Tecatito from Sevilla being the most valuable one at 10 million euros. In the Serie A, Mexico has 3 players, led by Chucky Lozano from Napoli, that they actually won the Serie A this season. In the Bundesliga, there's no Mexicans. In Liga, in France, there's also no Mexicans. In the Belgium League, there's 1 Mexican player, Arteaga, that plays for Genk. In the Netherlands, in the Eredivisie, there are 4 Mexican players, some of them being Edson Alvarez and Santi Jimenez, that had very successful seasons. Now in Portugal, Russia, Turkey, and the EFL Championship, there are no Mexican players. So the total amount of Mexican players in the top 11 leagues in Europe is 12, which is the same amount that Venezuela has. But Venezuela has no players in the Premier League. They have 2 players in La Liga, 1 in the Serie A, 1 in Liga, and 8 in the Portuguese League, for a total of 12 players. So I'm going to actually place Mexico in 10th place and Venezuela in 11th. Just as a tiebreaker, I'm going to say Mexico has more quality. The quantity is the same, but Mexico has more quality, so I'll give them number 10. Country number 9 is the almighty Canada. So Canada has 1 goalkeeper in the English Premier League. His name is Tom McGill from Brighton. He doesn't really play or even make the bench, but it still counts for this video. That's what I talk about, quality and quantity. He just adds quantity and not much quality, even though he's still 23 and he could develop. In La Liga, Canada has Kyle Larin from Valladolid. In the Serie A, there are no Canadians in the Serie A at the time of this recording. Maybe Buchanan will be there next season, but he isn't right now. And Tomori is not Canadian. He plays for England, so he doesn't count for this video. In the Bundesliga, you have 1 Canadian, and and that is Alphonso Davies, that is currently worth 70 million euros. In Ligue 1, which is the French league, you have 2 Canadians, one of them being Jonathan David as the standout player, consistently scoring goals there, and his current market value is around 60 million euros. In the Belgium league, you have Tejan Buchanan, that's worth around 12 million euros, and that is the one player they have there. In the Portuguese league, they have 2 players. The big name is obviously Eustáquio from Porto. Canada also has 2 players in the Turkish league and 3 players in the EFL Championship, the second division of England. They have no players in the Vodka League. So that comes out to be a total of 13 players in the top 11 leagues in Europe, which is 1 more than Mexico. And now, before we continue and go to country number 8, off to country number 8, and that is Chile. So Chile has no players in the Premier League, but they have 2 players in La Liga, 3 players in the Serie A, no players in the Bundesliga, 3 players in Liga, 1 player in the Belgium League, 1 player in the Portuguese League. They actually do have a player in the Vodka League, and then they also have 3 players in the second division of England, the EFL Championship, for a total of 14 Chilean players in the top 11 leagues in Europe. But I'll tell you one thing, all right? They are ranked 8th, which is ahead of Mexico and Canada. But nowadays, Chile has less quality than Mexico and Canada, for sure. But again, this is not a quality ranking, even though I'm kind of giving my opinion in regards to that. But Chile, for this video, in terms of amount, they are number 8. Nation number 7 are the Reggae Boys, Jamaica. So most, if not almost all the Jamaican players, they play in England. 4 of them play in the English Premier League. The most notable names are probably Leon Bailey and Mikel Antonio. And then they have 1 player that plays in the Vodka League, and that is Shamar Nicholson. And then they have 11 players in the EFL Championship, the second division of England, for a total of 16 players in the top 11 leagues in Europe. And that gets them to be ranked number 7. So yeah, pretty much all of them play in England, except for 1 player that plays in the Vodka League. So nation number 6 is actually one of the fastest rising nations in the world of soccer, right? They've been improving tremendously the past few years, especially the past decade, and that is Ecuador. They're nation number 6. So in the English Premier League, there are 3 Ecuadorian players, and they all play for Brighton. One of them being the midfielder Sarmiento, the other one being the left back Pervis Estupinan, and then you also have one of the best midfielders in the league, Moises Caicedo. In La Liga, there's also 1 Ecuadorian player, and that's Gonzalo Plata. In the Serie A, there's no Ecuadorian player. In the Bundesliga, you have Piero Hincapié, the very talented center back from Bayer Leverkusen. In Ligue 1, you have 1 Ecuadorian player. In Belgium, you have 5 players. In Portugal, you have 1. In the Vodka League, you have 2. In Turkey, you also have 2. Now, there are no Ecuadorian players in the Dutch League or in the EFL Championship, the second division, for a total of 16 players. So essentially, Ecuador was tied with Jamaica, but again, I gave them the 6th spot, just like I gave Mexico the 10th spot over Venezuela. I think Ecuador has more quality than Jamaica. Therefore, they are number 6. Nation number 5 might come as a surprise to many, because even when I was scripting it and researching for it, I actually thought this nation was going to be number 3, but they're actually number 5, and that's Uruguay. So Uruguay has 4 players in the English Premier League, one of them being Darwin Núñez, that is worth 70 million euros. In La Liga, they have 15 players, with Fede Valverde leading the way, being worth 100 million euros. In the Serie A, they have 5. In the Bundesliga, they have 2. In Liga, they have 1. In the Belgium League, they have 2. In the Eredivisie, they have none. 0 players in the Dutch League, which is weird because once upon a time, Luisito Suarez was there. In the Portuguese League, they have 6 players, one of them being Ugarte, which is worth 25 million euros, the young promising central defensive midfielder. In the Vodka League, they have 3 players. In the Turkish League, they have 5. In the EFL Championship, they have 0. So the total amount of Uruguayans in the top 11 leagues in Europe is 43 players. But I'll tell you one thing, in my personal opinion, in terms of quantity, they are 5th. In terms of quality in the Americas, I would probably place Uruguay in 3rd place. Just saying. Now we're off to nation number 4, and that is Colombia. So Colombia has 6 players in the English Premier League. Probably the most known one is Luis Diaz, that is worth 75 million euros at the time of this recording. They also have 5 players in La Liga, 8 players in the Italian Serie A, 3 in the Bundesliga, 1 in Liga, 3 in the Belgium League, 0 in the Dutch League, 9 in Portugal, 4 in the Vodka League, 4 in the Turkish League, and 2 in the EFL Championship, the English second division, for a total of 5 players. So despite missing the 2022 World Cup, Colombia still has plenty of talent across Europe, high quality players. And that's why they're still ranked top 5. They're number 4. But who's number 3? Okay, but before we go to nation number 3, I have a question for you. Why don't you go in the comment section down below and give me your power rankings? Forget quantity, just focus on quality. If it was just based off quality, how would this ranking look? But now, let's go to nation number 3, which is the United States of America. So the United States has 9 Americans in the English Premier League, one of them being Christian Pulisic, that is the most valuable one of them all at 32 million euros. In La Liga, the United States has 2 players, with Yunus Musa being the most valuable one at 22 million euros. In the Italian Serie A, we have Serginho Dest, sorta, kinda, but not really. I mean, he is leaving AC Milan. Regardless, he will be playing on one of those top 11 leagues, so Dest still counts. In the Bundesliga, we have an incredible number of 9 Americans, which is the highest for any country in the Americas, even ahead of Brazil. The highest market value player is Gio Reyna at 28 million euros. Of course, some of the players are still prospects, but I'm still counting them anyway because that's what this video is about. Caden Clark, Paredes, Aronson, but they are still in the league, and some of them are even playing for their clubs, so they do count. In Ligue 1, the French league, we have 2 Americans, the most notable name being Tim Weah. In the Belgium league, there are 6 Americans, the most notable name being Mark McKenzie. In the Eredivisie, we have Ricardo Pepi there, for a total of 3 Americans there. Obviously, Ricardo Pepi is going to leave the Dutch league. Regardless, he's still going to be in a top 11 league. In the Portuguese league, we have 4 Americans, with Reggie Cannon being the most notable name. In the Vodka league, we have no Americans for obvious reasons. In the Turkish league, we have Haji Wright, so just 1 American. And in the EFL Championship, we have 9 Americans, which is the most in the Americas, only behind Jamaica that has 11, for a total of 46 Americans in the top 11 leagues in Europe. Again, I'm not talking about quality. In terms of quantity, the United States is sending a lot of players to Europe. And I'm actually very curious to how everyone's going to put their power ranking in the comment section down below, because the power ranking will be similar to this ranking. Trust me, not the same, but very much similar. But now let's go to the top 2. So country number 2 is Argentina, the current World Cup champions. So Argentina has 14 players in the English Premier League, with Enzo Fernandez from Chelsea being the most valuable one of them all at 85 million euros. In La Liga, there's an incredible 29 Argentine players, with De Paul being the most valuable one at 40 million euros, and they account for 13.9% of the foreigners in La Liga. That's insane. Now, in the Italian Serie A, we have 22 Argentine players, with Lautaro Martinez being the biggest name with a current market value of 80 million euros. Even though he kind of sucked for Argentina in the World Cup, he's very good for Inter Milan. Now, in the Bundesliga, there's only 2 Argentine players. In Liga, there are 5 Argentine players, and I'm counting Lionel Messi. But of course, he will leave PSG this summer, as it has been announced by Fabrizio Romano. We don't know if he's going to go to Saudi Arabia, MLS, or maybe Barcelona. In Belgium, there are 3 players from Argentina. In the Eredivisie, they have 3. In the Portuguese league, they have 6. In the Vodka league, they have 7 players. In the Turkish league, they have 2. And in the EFL Championship, they have 0. For a total of 93 players from Argentina that play in the top 11 leagues in Europe. And then nation number 1, which is pretty obvious, it's Brazil. So Brazil has an incredible 33 players in the English Premier League, which is 9% of the foreigners in the league. The most valuable one of them all is Gabriel Jesus at 75 million euros. Arsenal alone have 3 players named Gabriel. Gabriel Martinelli, Gabriel Jesus, Gabriel Magalhães. In La Liga, you have 22 Brazilians, and Vinicius Jr. is the highest market value at 120 million euros. So I'm not sure on this, but back in the day, we used to have more Brazilians in La Liga than the English Premier League, but that's not the case anymore. Now in the Serie A, Brazil has 22 players, which is the same amount as Argentina. In the Bundesliga, there's only 4 Brazilian players, which is surprisingly low. In Ligue 1, Brazil has 18 players, obviously Neymar being the number 1 for now, unless he leaves. In Belgium, there are 3 Brazilian players. In the Eredivisie, the Dutch league, there are 7 Brazilian players. Now, in the Portuguese league, there's an incredible 110 Brazilian players, which counts for roughly 37% of the foreigners in the league. Now keep in mind, a lot of these Brazilian players also have a Portuguese passport, okay? In the Vodka League, you have 19 Brazilian players. In the Turkish League, you also have 13, which is the most amount of foreigners in the league alongside Portugal. In the EFL Championship, you have 6 Brazilians. Well, soon during the summer you're going to have less because João Pedro, that played for Watford, is going to go to Brighton in the English Premier League, but still he's playing for the top 11 leagues. For a total of 257 players, 257 Brazilians in the top 11 leagues in Europe. That's a lot. Alright everyone, thank you very much for watching. Let me know in the comment section down below your power rankings, because this one right here was just using data, right? I was just counting the amount of players. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. If you want us to do a power ranking video in the future, let me know also in the comment section down below, and I'll gladly do so based on my opinion. I'll try to be as non-biased as possible. I want to thank you all very much for watching. Drop a like before you go, and have a great day.